Hey YouTubers, this is the Gold Standard Caesar924 coming at you with another installment of my Wrestling Reimagining series for you guys today. I'm going to pick up where I left off in my rebooking of WWE 2006. Last where I left off was New Year's Revolution. If you haven't checked it out already, I highly recommend you watch the first chapter of my fantasy rebooking before you get to the second chapter, which in this video I'll be tackling the Royal Rumble event. Now, the Royal Rumble 2006 this year, even looking from the card in actuality, it just kind of really makes me glad that I did not watch this pay per view when it originally aired on pay per view, obviously. And, looking at the undercard, you had like matches like JBL and the Boogeyman, you had Mickey James and Ashley with Triceps as the guest referee. You had Kurt Angle versus Mark Henry for the world title. And, even you had like two matches that are at least sufficiently good, like Edge versus Cena for the WWE title, and as well as the 30-man Royal Rumble match itself. Because without the Royal Rumble match, what purpose is there for the Royal Rumble pay per view to exist in the first place? So I analyzed the card of the Royal Rumble that year, and it just kind of really scratches my head. And just even rewatching the show on the WWE Network, it just really shows just how bad of this pay per view it is, and how disappointing it was compared to previous Royal Rumble events. And I remember I did a review on it like way back when I was starting out making videos, and rewatching it again about 5, 6 years after I did that review, it still was pretty bad. In this case, using my role as a fantasy booker or a guest booker, however you want to put it, what I'm gonna do here is basically rebook the card and try to provide sort of a summary of how some of these matches have been built up leading into this event. Now, we're going to open up with a six-man Mayhem. This is going to be for the Cruiserweight title. Kash is going to defend the belt against the likes of Funaki, Brian Kendrick, Paul London, Psicosis, and Super Crazy. Now, they actually did a multi-man match for the Cruiserweight title in the real Royal Rumble 06. I did kind of change the competitors around a bit, so you won't see like Shane Helms being involved in the match. And then if you watch the pay-per-view, you might already know who won that match. And then Shane Helms ended up going to Smackdown afterwards. So I did change around the competitors a little bit around. Like I added Brian Kendrick in this title contention instead of someone like Nunzio or Scotty 2 Hotty of sorts. But not that I have anything personal against those wrestlers, but as far as this being a pay-per-view, I really want to showcase some of the key important cruiserweight figures of that particular division. Now, Kash has been the Cruiserweight champion since the tail end of 2005, and he's been holding that belt for quite a while now. And Kash has been cutting these promos, just talking about how superior he is in the division, that he's better than everyone else, that he doesn't really have as much competition. And with the Royal Rumble match, especially now that he's qualified for the 30-man over the top rope, I mean, he's willing to take that next step up the ladder, up into the climbing that brass rung, and even trying to strive above and beyond the cruiserweight division by going after some of the other top tier titles, and particularly the World Heavyweight Championship. Especially especially when it comes to Royal Rumble matches, you want to go above and beyond, and become once you win the Royal Rumble match, then you would earn a title shot for the world title of any choosing at WrestleMania. Kash is going to do all he can to make sure that he will walk out with both titles in his grasp. So he's going to retain the belt here. Now, you have, Funaki, Brian Kendrick, Paul London, the Mexicals are, they can't really stand Kid Cash's attitude. And they fought Kid Cash on separate occasions, especially when it comes to one-on-one matches, and Kash would somehow walk off still with the Cruiserweight title in his grasp. And it's definitely no different here in this pay-per-view. And Kash is going to survive the six-man mayhem. He's going to overcome the odds and basically retain the Cruiserweight Championship there. So we get to the second match, which will be for the Women's Championship. And Trish Stratus is going to defend the belt against Victoria, along with a special guest referee appointed by Vince McMahon, who will be Mickie James. Now, how all this comes to fruition is at New Year's Revolution, Victoria successfully wins the gauntlet match to earn a title shot against Trish Stratus for her Women's Championship belt. Now, the gauntlet match ends in a very screwy finish where Victoria had beaten Mickie James by using a roll-up, using rope leverage in order for her to win the match. And Mickie James has been very distraught and just really goes ballistic, that she came up short, that she won't get that opportunity to face Trish at any given point in time. And given Mickie James's fondness of Trish Stratus and her chemistry with the women's champs, it's just, Mickey's really starting to show a little more of a other side of her. Like one moment she could be like the nicest person in the world, and next thing you know, she's like this really psychotic human being that just is so overly attached to Trish Stratus. And even though Trish and Mickie are still, together in some way, I mean, Trish, she's really starting to show a little more, like, she starts to get a little more suspicious. She started to get a little more uncomfortable with how Mickie James has been treating her lately, ever since losing that gauntlet match. Now, what's going to happen is that Mickie James is going to go up to Vince McMahon's office and try to convince Vince McMahon to watch the tapes of the gauntlet match, because she feels like Mickie James got screwed over, and she convinces Vince McMahon to rewatch the tapes, which he does at some point during Raw. And Vince McMahon just kind of comes to sort of a decision that because of the questionable finish surrounding the gauntlet match, that at the Royal Rumble, Trish Stratus will defend her belt against Victoria, but to add another extra ingredient to the concoction, there will be a special guest referee in which Vince McMahon will announce Mickie James will serve under that position to officiate the match involving Trish and Victoria. Now, you would think that, with Trish Stratus being on good terms with Mickie, you would think this would, likely give her a bit of an advantage, especially since Victoria has Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle as her sort of companions, because I think they were a part of like a little stable called Vince's Devils that was going on around this time. And because the likes of Tori and Candice, and as far as their affiliation with Victoria is concerned, that this could potentially heightens the possibility that Victoria may walk out of the match as the new women's champion. But given the circumstances surrounding Mickie James, as far as the animosity that her and Victoria have been getting, I mean, this is kind of really getting her a little bit worried in some ways. And Trish Stratus is kind of the same too. I mean, despite her and Mickie James being on good terms, is that lately with Mickie James's attitude, Trish isn't, kind of feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the way that she's surrounding her. So the women's title match happens, and at some point, Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle, being the heels that they are gonna do all they can to help Victoria in some way, whether it be trying to distract Mickie James or trying to interfere in the match and, lay an attack on Trish Stratus, so giving Victoria a bit of a easy ongoing advantage there. But Mickie James starts to take notice of this at some point, and she even gets to the point where she bars Tori and Candice from ringside. So they're forced to head backstage while Trish and Victoria continue the match going forward. Now, the match will end in a very dusty finish, and because Victoria, from after the events that happened at New Year's Revolution, coming off a match utilizing dirty tactics, Mickie James is gonna use Victoria's tactics against her, and Trish Stratus is gonna get some kind of roll up, and Mickie James is gonna make like a fast 3 count for Trish Stratus to retain the Women's Championship. Victoria's just very distraught and pissed off, and even trying to get up to Mickie James, try to attack her. Trish Stratus ends up saving Mickie James, attacking Victoria and protecting Mickie in some way. And after Victoria leaves the ring, Trish and Mickie have sort of a bit of a falling out going on between the two. Mickie James is like, I'm very glad that that you're still the champion and all this sort of thing. Trish Stratus is like, I should have beaten Victoria fair and square. You had no right to make that 3 count. I mean, granted, you're the referee, but you should have acted like an unbiased referee of such. And, she just, even though Trish won the match, she kind of really feels a bit unsatisfied because, she knows that she could fight her own battles and, defeat Victoria fair and square, and she doesn't really like the way that Mickie James, especially with her involvement. This is where Trish and Mickie, as far as their chemistry is concerned, this is going to be where the seeds start planning as far as their eventual disintegration starts to boil throughout the next several weeks. So, nevertheless, Trish Stratus retains the women's title. And now we get to the World Heavyweight Championship bout. Randy Orton going in as the champion, defending against Rey Mysterio. And you may ask yourself, how is this all possible, you ask? I mean, wasn't Batista the World Heavyweight Champion? Now, as far as the explanation, goes back to the tail end of 2005 going into 2006. And what happens here is that after Randy Orton, he lost the Hell in a Cell match to The Undertaker at Armageddon. But even during that time, Randy Orton and Batista, they were both on the same brand. They were on Smackdown. They had a match for the World Heavyweight title in a lumberjack match, which was contested because this was during the middle of the Smackdown versus Raw Survivor Series match, fighting for bragging rights. So, Batista and Orton had a World Heavyweight title match that ended in a no contest because of the outside interference from all the superstars from Monday Night Raw attacking superstars of SmackDown. So, unfortunately, but with Batista and Orton, they were unable to have a decisive victor. So, in all of this, Randy Orton has been constantly requesting title shots against Batista, but Batista's always having something else in mind because he was the tag team champions with Rey Mysterio, and he had his thing going on with Big Show and Kane, and then later Eminem, and then the last SmackDown of 2005, they had a tag team cage match for the tag titles where a returning Mark Henry interfered in the match and cost Batista and Rey Mysterio to lose the title belts back to Eminem. And then on a house show event, it was informed that Batista suffered an injury in his tricep arm. And it was announced on SmackDown that Batista would be forced to require medical attention, that he'll be out of action for quite some time. So Batista would be forced to relinquish his World Heavyweight title. Now, Teddy Long, the SmackDown general manager at the time, announces that there's going to be a battle royal going on to determine who's going to be the World Heavyweight Champion. So the battle royal will go on like it did in reality. And Randy Orton is going to win that battle royal match. He's going to eliminate Rey Mysterio in a very similar fashion to the ending of Royal Rumble 97, where the final 4 competitors, I believe, was Bret, Stone Cold, Undertaker and Vader. And Taker and Vader were the ones to get eliminated, if I'm not mistaken. And Bret Hart initially eliminated Stone Cold, but despite Bret Hart being the last one staying in the ring, the referees were distracted because Undertaker and Vader were brawling, and then Stone Cold ended up sneaking his way back in the ring, eliminates Bret Hart to become the 97 Royal Rumble winner. This is going to be something very similar to that. So Rey Mysterio is going to eliminate Randy Orton using the Hurricane Rana to eliminate Randy Orton initially, but the referees are preoccupied with the two competitors that were already eliminated by this point. So Rey Mysterio is celebrating, but the bell doesn't ring for some reason. But Rey Mysterio is still acting like he won the match. And then Randy Orton sneaks his way back in the ring, eliminates Rey Mysterio out of nowhere to become the World Heavyweight Champion when the referees manage to get their attention back over the action going on in the ring. So, assuming Randy Orton was the only person in that ring, Randy Orton will walk off of that match as the World Heavyweight Champion. So Rey Mysterio is just very infuriated because he feels that he should have won that match. He convinces Teddy Long to rewatch the instant replay about how that match unfolded. Teddy Long says, as much as I wish there was something to do, unfortunately I can't reverse the decision, especially not that way. But since the Royal Rumble is around the corner, we could have a World Heavyweight title defense with Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio to determine who the Undisputed Champion on Smackdown really is. The match is sanctioned for the Royal Rumble event, and I don't necessarily want to utilize Eddie Guerrero as a way to build up Rey Mysterio or as a way to build up this particular match. I mean, they really utilize Eddie Guerrero's death as a way to tell a story, and I don't think it really did Rey Mysterio any favors. And then even the same with Randy Orton, since they had to, have him come off as this sort of pricky heel, and he even went out his way to let Rey Mysterio to let him know that Eddie isn't in heaven, that he's in hell, and just utilizing very cheap heat in order to get himself over. And it really shows that, it's not so much that they're offending Eddie Guerrero or it's the belief that Eddie would be rolling his grave if he heard someone say negative remarks about him. But it just really feels like a cheap way to build or to create a sort of a storyline or a program. And I honestly don't think it really helped any competitor in particular, especially with Rey Mysterio. And you might be wondering, especially looking at the card, like Rey Mysterio is not in the Rumble match. So that kind of really gives you that Rey Mysterio will not be competing in the 30-man Rumble match. Basically, the match very similar to how it happened at No Way Out, but except here it's at the bigger stage, and Randy Orton's gonna come out on top. He's gonna get a roll up on Rey Mysterio to come out of the match and retain the World Heavyweight title. And we could play it up similar in ways where Rey Mysterio goes backstage with the cameraman following up to him, and he's just very devastated and a bit frustrated as well. I mean, as much as Rey Mysterio is doing all he can to, to prove that anybody could be world champion, that sometimes, despite hard work, it's like you might not always get what you want. Randy Orton's gonna walk out of that match still your World Heavyweight Champion. As unfortunate as it may sound. Sorry, Ray. Now we get to the TLC match for the WWE Championship. Edge defending the belt against Ric Flair. Now, the night after New Year's Revolution. So, Edge, as we all remember, for those that have been watching my booking from New Year's Revolution, he won the WWE title by cashing in Money in the Bank. And as a result of the injuries sustaining from the Elimination Chamber match that John Cena had to go through. So either the announcers or Vince McMahon will let it be known to the crowd and as well as the viewers watching at home that John Cena has suffered a severe injury and that he'll be out of action for the duration of the time being. Because John Cena will be out of action, this means that he won't be competing for the Royal Rumble. Really try to utilize a way to put a lot of heat on Edge and just being this despicable heel like he was around this time period. Now, as far as that the WWE Championship belt is concerned, because John Cena had that spinner belt that he had because he was the rapper at the time, what's going to happen here is that Edge is going to basically discard the WWE title. He would end up bringing back the Undisputed title belt design that you might remember when JBL was holding the belt before Cena did. So Edge will end up bringing back the Undisputed title belt and basically just trashing about John Cena about how he's been making the WWE title belt look like some bling bling sideshow. Something that JBL actually said, but Edge ends up reiterating that sort of situation as far as what John Cena did with that WWE title belt, and that he just made a complete mockery out of it, and that this is the same title belt that's been around for over, I want to say 45 or 50 years, however long that may be, and to see John Cena just redesign the belt into his own bling bling, sort of like something out of G Unit. I don't know if there are any hip hop fans, but G Unit was a really huge hip hop group in the mid 2000s, and they always came out with this like huge gold medal like around their necklace. Edge just kind of feels that John Cena's just made a mockery out of that WWE Championship belt and decides to bring back the more prestigious title belt that came before it, with the Undisputed title belt design. He brings that belt back. And we do the live sex celebration like they did. That actually drew really good ratings. One of the highest rated Raws in many years, because this was just about nearly 5 years after the purchase of WCW and 5 years after the Attitude Era had long since ended. Yeah, so we do the live sex celebration, and Ric Flair is going to chime in the middle of the live sex celebration and just basically brings up all the shenanigans that happened at New Year's Revolution. It's like, we never had a decisive finish. Edge, you had to leave me bloodied and battered when you clubbed me with that briefcase. And you could really utilize that as a way to build up for your anticipating grudge match at the Royal Rumble. And since Edge is the WWE Champion, he feels that he has control over which match stipulation he will have. And in this case, he sanctions a tables, ladders, and chairs match to set up for the Royal Rumble event. Ric Flair agrees. But the thing with Ric Flair is that he's never been in a particular match that involved a ladder. Edge, this kind of really plays up Edge's advantage because he's had experience with tables, ladders, and chairs, especially being in a tag team match with Christian when he was tag team champions with him, and he's winning matches. He's been sort of undefeated in these sort of matches up until this point. That plays in favor of the Rated R superstar. But can Ric Flair prove that he can hang with Edge no matter what type of match stipulation he's in? And that's the question we have to find out. And we do. Now we have Ric Flair's family watching this match. I think they did this on Raw, and they had his family involved since they were in his hometown. But I guess that was kind of understandable in ways. I think because of how huge of a marquee match that you can get out of this, and given the bad blood that both Edge and Flair have been getting leading into the Royal Rumble. So we have the match, and Edge is going to walk out of the match as the WWE Champion. He's going to retrieve the WWE Championship belt. Lita will obviously get involved in this match in some way, shape, or form. But despite Ric Flair coming closer and closer to that golden belt, that WWE title belt he hasn't held in years, unfortunately, he gets the receiving end. He gets the short end of the stick. Edge knocks Ric Flair off the ladder, Edge utilizes this time to climb up, slowly climb up, and just grabbing both hands on the WWE Championship belt on the strap. He takes it down. Edge still walks out. He's still WWE Champion, and he's still undefeated in that TLC match. Now we get to the 30-man over the top Royal Rumble match. And basically, Kurt Angle is going to win this match. Now, he's been getting title opportunity after title opportunity after title opportunity, even to the point where Vince McMahon decides that Kurt Angle cannot qualify for the Royal Rumble due to the amount of title opportunities he's been getting, at least until in the weeks in the especially on Raw, where Triple H is also another wrestler that's also been unqualified for the Royal Rumble because he's also been dominant as world champ for so long, and he's had many chances trying to regain the world heavyweight title from Batista, and even despite that, it's like Triple H is, or at least in Vince McMahon's eyes, that Triple H cannot contend for a world title belt, which kind of gets into Triple H's skin. And even during the, even though he was involved in the Elimination Chamber match, he didn't walk out as WWE champion. To address these sort of situations between Triple H and Kurt Angle, and how that these two wrestlers, that Vince McMahon decided not to put them in the Royal Rumble match. So he gives each of those guys one last opportunity. And whoever wins that, one of them will be the entrant into the 30-man Royal Rumble, and one of them is going to sit out. So Kurt Angle ends up winning the Royal Rumble qualifying round against Triple H. Vince McMahon will get involved in some way, shape, or form. Angle's going to go over Triple H, and Triple H is just really infuriated because, now, especially now that he's not in the Royal Rumble match, which just leaves him distraught, that he's been in this business for so long. I can't believe you do this to me. And he tries to go after Vince McMahon. So Shane McMahon ends up coming out from the crowd, attacks Triple H, leaving him unconscious, leaving him battered. We have no idea what is going on here. Shane McMahon hasn't even been around WWE programming for about a while, I believe. They might have shown up on Homecoming, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, he hasn't really shown up on very often like he did in the early 2000s. But it's still a very surprise that Shane McMahon pops up on WTV for the first time in a while. Kurt Angle gets that opportunity to go in the Royal Rumble match, and he will successfully win the match to become the 2006 Royal Rumble winner. So therefore, at this time, there was a stipulation that was created as part of the 2004 Royal Rumble. If you remember, Chris Benoit won that match, and basically the next night on Raw, he ended up confronting Triple H and announcing that he's going to use that Royal Rumble victory to challenge Triple H for the World Heavyweight title. And it would seem like from that point onward that the winner of the Royal Rumble would get a choice of whether or not to face the WWE Champion on Raw or the World Heavyweight Champion on Smackdown. So in this case with Kurt Angle, he decides to go after the World Heavyweight title on Smackdown. So therefore, he gets traded from Monday Night Raw over to Friday Night Smackdown. And I think that's how I would book or rebook Kurt Angle's transition from Monday nights to Friday nights, especially since they had Kurt Angle pop up as a mystery competitor in the SmackDown Battle Royal match. But I think you could have done this kind of in a way that makes sense, because after Chris Benoit did what he did, I mean, not just the 2007 murder or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But after what Chris Benoit went from SmackDown to Raw in 2004, there wasn't really any other Royal Rumble winners after that managed to move from one show to the other. But in this case, with Kurt Angle, he utilized that clause and basically gets a fresh start by returning to the place where he built SmackDown, Kurt Angle. And that's basically how I would book the Royal Rumble pay-per-view card in general. Tell me what you think about this card, and stay tuned as I will book No Way Out Chapter 3. So stick around if you're still interested in this fantasy rebooking. Thank you all guys for watching. Till then, this is the Gold Standard 0924 signing out.